drag everyone off their Saturdays, their first weekend day, and just come for this warm conversation around the table. And so that being resolved, let me introduce you to me. My name is Hoda Alkhzaimi. I'm currently Director for Center for Cybersecurity in NYU Abu Dhabi. I'm Assistant Professor as well on NYU, but I spent 12 years prior. I have a total of 18 years of experience. 12 years of that was on sovereign funds, investments, creating Silicon Valleys, micro threads of Silicon Valleys around UAE. I started my education in UAE University in the Department of Electrical Engineering, and I switched to information security. I got a master's degree in mathematics and cryptology, and then I got a PhD in cryptology. And then while working, because I've done all of this while working in the beautiful, very grueling and very tough industry of, trying to create small industrial platforms in UAE. So I realized the power of understanding how to raise investments and how to understand valuation of businesses and valuation of companies. So went ahead and across, and you see on my itinerary a bit of legal background and investment. So I prepared a bit of slide to ask you, how many of you around the room have a very preset definition of what is Silicon Valley and where did it start? Before I get to acknowledge the contribution of women to Silicon Valleys across the world, we are so preconditioned to think that Silicon Valleys are these kind of organizations that come to rise in the Bay Area in San Francisco and the United States in the 50s and 40s, right? And we give so much contribution to the grid that happened on that kind of structure where a new industrial revolution was pushed into light. And to think of it, when you try to understand where did it start, who's the person who this started, this kind of fascinating dream of getting industry together started with, you get to see that most of the literature directs you to Frederick Terman, who's the dean of engineering at that point of time at Stanford, and was great conversation to have when I was doing the research and data in here. But I will share with you something later on. There has been a lot of contribution to this Silicon Valley coming into light from women bodies across the same area in Santa Clara Valley that was not contributed in the literature. And this is what we call always by the hidden effect of women that comes into every other industry where they do so much, but they always do it behind the corridors or behind and for them, they're part of the support system, and which is understandable, which is great. So outside of support, at a certain point of time, it's understandable. But it's not only women; it's also other nationalities or other workforce groups that contribute to Silicon Valleys in different parts of the world, but majorly in the US. But they're not there into the campus. How many of you would understand that Silicon Valley in the US is not actually about Silicon Valley in the US? What is the working force of this powerhouse and engine of Silicon Valley in the US? Or for Silicon Valley being in New York or in San Francisco? You could see most of it is actually about all of the supply chain that would exist in China or Singapore or India, and the powerhouse of R&Ds that exist on this. So the impact now is huge. It's not just what we're seeing in the literature. So it falls into this fourth industrial revolution or the revolutionary waves where we wanted to always create something, either steam power or either going to Mars or going to the moon or going somewhere in the world. And I will give you a stream of hope here, because after every crisis, after any single crisis like a war or the burst of internet bubble that happened in 2001, there's always some kind of a major technological revolution that happens that changes the world for the positive. So we should understand with everything that happened to us and happening to us at the moment, we're at the cusp of a new innovation that's coming ahead of us. And I understand that most of you could see that in the form of the metaverse, in the form of NFTs, in the form of cryptocurrencies, bitcoins, and blockchains, and all of this decentralized creation of wealth. So creation of wealth is not anymore about you working 9 to 5 hours, or about you being part of a certain banking industry or centralized financial institution. The creation of wealth is based more into the gig economy, into the creation economy, into people who are not part of the map but they're somehow controlling the wealth creation today, where it's about also the teenagers who are not part of it and creating it, and the women as well across the board. So this is another perception of how this kind of waves of elevation are being created, where we should understand that the responsibility that comes into our plate today is much more intense than what it used to be in the past. In the past, we used to think of one stream of industry that collectively work to grow, but today it's actually about having 50 different pathways of industry that are unified in one platform, and that's a bit of what we're having here, the digital platform. So it's about biochemistry, aviation, cybersecurity, AI, robotics, the mechanicals, and all of these engines coming into, changing humanity to the best that we can see across. So when I'm talking about Silicon Valleys, it's more than the 8 Silicon Valleys that exist in the world, in Singapore, in Kenya, in Chile, and the United States. When I Google it, and I would encourage all of you to go around and Google how many micro Silicon Valleys exist. I think Sana said earlier that we have these kind of fabrics intertwined in our industry here, and economy, for Silicon Valley. And when I looked into the literature of what makes Silicon Valley, yes, we do have it. We have more than the necessary ingredients. But what we don't have maybe is this kind of serendipitous chemical reaction where things come into flotation, we allow a bit of failure, we allow a bit of resiliency to exist for things to keep on flourishing. So this is again is something that I want you to go away with, is that we are not bounded anywhere by geographical borders of where the money is created, where the capital is flowing. It's not about us being centered, for example, in London, or centered in Singapore, or Luxembourg, or in the United States, because this is where the capital is flowing for this certain type of business. But we have to understand that there is a bit of backward fluency of funds that goes to, for example, Silicon Valley's in Bangalore, because people still control this kind of system. Bangalore is a very, very interesting case study to look at, because people did not want to move across board, and they brought in the fund to India, to the ecosystem in India right now, to raise more and more funding across board for the different R&Ds, for the different industry that exists across board. And Singapore is another one as well. I'm not going to go through that. But then again, the venture capital investment is high, sorry for the slide positioning, but it tells you what we used to raise in 1 billion. Today we're talking about 11 billion of investment in venture funding for Silicon Valleys. And the returns or the cash reverses that are being cultivated is mapping to whatever countries are being generated. So you can see here that, for example, Apple is raising something that's higher than what Singapore is raising, or Germany, or United Kingdom. And we'll see more of this being created, hopefully, in the future for many of the companies going on. I'm not going to go through this, but I want you to focus into what creates it exactly. What are the ingredients when we want to create this? It's not just the universities or the industries. It's all of us. It's all of us actually around the room. Because the lifestyle of the people, the work-life balance that is being created around this very critical economic structure is very important. And this is what creates this dynamic flow of allowing a level of trust to happen in the system, to invest, not because I have this conversation most of the time with startups in the Middle East and startups in the US and startups in Scandinavian countries. And I noticed that we have a very daring investors when it comes to someone who's coming from startup in the US or someone who's coming to startup in London, because they will invest in pre-seed idea or an ideation process, not on prototypes, not on ready-made concepts. While in the Middle East, they want to have a bit of security for the investment, so they will invest in mature businesses or startups that are past a certain series of investments, a certain series of valuation, like to make sure that they have a solid valuation in the market. And to me, it's weird because it's, again, sometimes it's the same investor. It's the same investor who would exist in Silicon Valley in the US, who would definitely invest on something that's on paper for you in the US, but here in the UAE, for example, or in the Middle East, they would like to have much more assurances to control the risks around their investments. And this is why I think the community could come together to provide a higher level of trust for this level of investments across board. So I'm not going to go through this, but let's talk a little bit about women in Silicon Valley. And let's talk about the fact that the first woman in Silicon Valley existed before the founder that I introduced earlier on in the 1868. And she was a mother of five, and she was as well a lawyer, an aspiring lawyer who started by changing the law of investing or trading when it happens to in Santa Clara as well. And when you are talking about what's the percentage of women working in Silicon Valley, in the US, it's only 9%. But when you look at this kind of statistics across map, especially here in this GCC, I think the percentage of women investing back in the economy in UAE is around 25%. 25% of that is a huge level of commitment, I would say, from the women community across board. I don't know how many of you know this picture already, but this is not a real picture, but it's the creation of the picture of the first lady who wrote the code for the mission to take us to the moon, or to take humanity to the moon. And it was a woman who actually wrote all this computer science code and who spent hours and hours and hours doing it because it was such a routine, mundane job that no one else wanted to do that. Sorry for the minute, but we need to celebrate a bit of the success that comes on board in here. And again, when it comes to the VC investors across board, I think the percentage that I've looked at is 12% in Silicon Valley in the US, but again, in UAE, it's much more higher than that. And I think I don't want to go through this, then I'll skip the rest of my slides here. I just want to leave with this kind of thought when people wanted to analyze why women are bringing more value within a workforce. And I think part of the conversation is that we don't think on a solo platform, but we think collectively of a community and economy. Because the women I work with, most of the time they think of how can we bring in everybody on board. Everybody, being children, being senior citizens, being men, and being other people who are contributing to the society. Because they don't see the value that's being created as a singular aspect for one single generation. It's not a selfish streak. It's more of a collective impact of the whole community. And I think this goes beyond what we see. And today, when we talk about the economies that are being enabled, specifically in digital economy or gig economy, or the economy of the metaverse that is being created, we see a huge movement of women that are stepping forward to correct how investments are flowing. Where is it flowing? And the major aspects of doing that, the major ability of doing that is just making sure that we can craft this kind of niche community that would be interested in building technology for good, or building impact for good, or building Silicon Valleys for good. And for good, I mean is to just go and, for example, I'm just gonna pass all of this. I'll go to this final thought, but it goes into contributing to the SDG goals and contributing to the productivity of bringing the rest of the world together and making sure that we can get back to resiliencies of why not today, while we're creating something here in the Middle East, contribute to creating a shared, for example, like electrical grid that could go to contribute to countries in Africa, countries who doesn't have, for example, enough access to electricity or access to education or access to digital platform, and creating that sense of shared economy across the board. So I think most of the ideas that we see around the working groups that we have at the moment is clustered around that. And it's all about collaboration. Again, bringing industry, private sector, and government sector together, making sure that you focus on well-being of the citizen, not just short-term revenues and investments, but making sure that you focus actually on bringing value that is persevering, bringing more of roots to what economy will be constituted of in the next 50 years or 100 years to come for all of us. Thank you so much.